Starbound Paradox. What if the greatest journey humanity ever undertook was also its greatest mistake? What if the very technology that promised to unite the stars instead tore apart the fabric of space and time itself? Commander Elena Vasquez had asked herself these questions 1,000 times during the long voyage aboard the UES Harmony, but she never expected to find the answers in the most terrifying way possible. The bridge of the Harmony hummed with the familiar white noise of a ship traveling at near-light speed, a sound that had become as natural as breathing during their 18-month journey to the Kepler-442 system. Elena stood before the main view screen, watching the distorted star field that marked their passage through folded space. At 42, she was young for a deep space commander, but her record was flawless. Her crew trusted her implicitly, and the colonial administration had deemed her the perfect choice to lead humanity's first attempt at establishing a permanent settlement beyond the solar system. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan, which should have been reassuring. Instead, it filled her with an inexplicable sense of dread. The ship's artificial intelligence, known simply as Oracle, materialized beside her in its preferred holographic form of a middle-aged man in a crisp naval uniform. Oracle had been her constant companion throughout the journey, managing the countless systems that kept 15,000 colonists alive in the void between stars. Its personality matrix was based on the greatest strategic minds in human history, and Elena had grown to rely on its counsel more than she cared to admit. "Commander, we are approaching the deceleration phase," Oracle announced, its voice carrying the subtle warmth that the programmers had designed to put humans at ease. "All systems are operating within normal parameters. The colonists are beginning to emerge from extended hibernation, and our advanced scouts report that Kepler-442b appears to be everything our telescopes promised. Breathable atmosphere, abundant water, and no signs of intelligent life." Elena nodded, but something nagged at her. The mission briefings had been exhaustive, the preparations meticulous, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. "Oracle, run a complete diagnostic on our navigation systems. I want to make sure our position is accurate." "Of course, Commander. May I ask what prompts this concern?" "Call it intuition," Elena replied, though she wasn't sure that was entirely accurate. It was more than intuition. It was as if some part of her mind was trying to remember something important, something that remained frustratingly just out of reach. The diagnostic completed within seconds, confirming what Elena already knew it would. They were exactly where they should be, approaching their destination right on schedule. The Harmony's fusion engines had performed flawlessly. The AI had navigated them through the complexities of near-light travel without a single error, and their cargo of colonists, equipment, and genetic material remained secure in the ship's vast holds. By every metric that mattered, this was the most successful deep space mission in human history. So why did Elena feel like she was walking toward a precipice? Her contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Marcus Chen, the mission's chief scientist and her oldest friend. They had served together on 3 previous missions, and Marcus was one of the few people who could read her moods with uncomfortable accuracy. His usually cheerful demeanor was subdued as he approached, tablet in hand and concern written across his features. "Elena, I need to show you something," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been analyzing the quantum resonance patterns from our Fold space drive, and there's an anomaly, a significant one." Elena turned from the view screen, giving Marcus her full attention. The Fold space drive was humanity's greatest technological achievement, allowing ships to compress the distance between 2 points by manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The mathematics behind it were so complex that only a handful of scientists truly understood how it worked, and Marcus was one of them. "What kind of anomaly?" Elena asked. Marcus activated his tablet, projecting a 3-dimensional graph into the space between them. The visualization showed wave patterns that meant nothing to Elena, but she could see from Marcus's expression that whatever he was seeing was deeply troubling. "These are the quantum signatures we've been recording throughout our journey. They should be consistent, following a predictable pattern as we move through folded space. But look at this." He highlighted a section of the graph where the pattern suddenly shifted. becoming chaotic and unpredictable before settling into an entirely different configuration. This happened approximately 6 months into our journey. The drive continued to function normally. Our navigation remained accurate, but the fundamental quantum signature of our passage changed completely. "What does that mean?" Elena asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know the answer. "I'm not entirely certain," Marcus admitted. "But according to my calculations, this pattern suggests we're not just traveling through folded space. We're traveling through folded time as well." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Time dilation was a well-understood consequence of near-light travel, but what Marcus was describing was something far more complex and potentially dangerous. "Are you saying we've been time traveling?" "Not exactly traveling through time in the conventional sense," Marcus clarified. "It's more like we've been moving through multiple temporal dimensions simultaneously. The mathematics are unsettling. If I'm interpreting this correctly, we may have been experiencing the same journey from multiple perspectives, living through parallel versions of events without being aware of it." Before Elena could respond, the ship's communications array crackled to life. Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, the communications officer, looked up from her station with confusion written across her young face. "Commander, I'm receiving a transmission. It's on our emergency frequency, but the signal is coming from directly ahead of us, from the direction of Kepler-442b. Elena's blood ran cold. There should be no one at their destination. Humanity had confirmed again and again that the system was uninhabited, that they would be the first intelligent beings to set foot on the planet they had already named New Eden. "Put it through," she ordered. The main speakers filled with static, then cleared to reveal a voice that made Elena's knees weak. It was her own voice, older and strained with exhaustion, speaking words that sent ice through her veins. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the UES Harmony. If you're receiving this transmission, you need to turn back immediately. Do not approach Kepler-442b. Do not attempt to establish a colony. We were wrong about everything. The planet is not uninhabited. There is something here, something that has been waiting for us. Something that exists outside of normal time and space, and it has been manipulating our journey from the beginning. The fold space drive doesn't just bend distance, it creates temporal echoes, copies of ourselves living out the same events across multiple timelines. I don't know how many versions of us have made this journey, how many times we've lived through these same moments, but I know that every time we try to colonize this planet, something goes catastrophically wrong. You have to turn back. Please, for the love of everything we hold dear, turn back before it's too late." The transmission cut to static, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Elena stared at the speakers as if they might provide some rational explanation for what she had just heard, but the only sound was the steady hum of the ship's systems and the barely audible breathing of her crew. Dr. Chen was the first to speak, his voice shaking. "Elena, that transmission, the quantum signature matches our communication systems exactly. It's not a fake or a recording. That message came from this ship." Oracle's holographic form flickered, a sign that the AI was processing information at maximum capacity. "Commander, I have completed a thorough analysis of the transmission. Dr. Chen is correct. The signal originated from the UES Harmony's communication array, but the temporal displacement suggests it was sent from a point approximately 47 years in the future." Elena forced herself to think clearly despite the impossibility of what she was hearing. "That's not possible. Even accounting for time dilation, our journey should have taken less than 2 years ship time." "Under normal circumstances, yes," Oracle agreed. "However, if Dr. Chen's analysis of our quantum signatures is accurate, we may not be experiencing normal circumstances. The fold space drive may have created what theoretical physicists call a temporal loop, trapping us in a recursive pattern of events that repeats across multiple timelines." Lieutenant Morrison's workstation chimed with an incoming message, causing everyone on the bridge to tense. She looked at her display with growing alarm. "Commander, I'm receiving multiple transmissions now, all from ahead of us, all using our communication codes and all containing warnings." "Put them through," Elena ordered, though every instinct told her she didn't want to hear what they contained. The bridge filled with a cacophony of voices, all recognizably members of the Harmony's crew, all speaking with the desperate urgency of people facing imminent disaster. Elena heard her own voice warning about temporal anomalies, Marcus describing impossible mathematical paradoxes, and dozens of other crew members reporting on disasters she couldn't even begin to understand. The transmissions overlapped and interfered with each other, creating a nightmare symphony of warnings from futures that might or might not come to pass. "Shut it off," Elena commanded, and Morrison quickly silenced the speakers. The sudden quiet was almost as disturbing as the voices had been. Dr. Chen was staring at his tablet with the expression of a man watching his fundamental understanding of reality crumble. "Elena, I've been running continuous analysis of our quantum signatures and the patterns are becoming more chaotic. Whatever's happening to us, it's accelerating." Elena looked around the bridge at her crew, seeing her own fear and confusion reflected in their faces. These were some of the most skilled and experienced spacefarers in human history, people who had volunteered for a one-way journey to establish humanity's future among the stars. They deserved better than vague warnings and impossible theories. "All right," she said, drawing on the command presence that had gotten her through a dozen previous crises. "Let's assume for a moment that everything we've heard is true, that we're trapped in some kind of temporal loop, that there's something on Kepler-442b that poses a threat to our mission. What are our options?" Oracle's projection solidified as the AI focused its processing power on the question. "Based on current data, we have 3 primary courses of action. First, we could continue to our destination as planned, accepting the risks, but attempting to break whatever pattern has trapped previous iterations of our journey. Second, we could attempt to reverse course, though our fuel reserves would require us to enter extended hibernation with minimal life support. Third, we could attempt to modify our fold space drive to break free from the temporal anomaly, though this would be extremely dangerous and could strand us permanently between stars. There's a fourth option," Dr. Chen said quietly. "We could try to establish communication with whatever intelligence is responsible for this. If there really is something on Kepler-442b that exists outside normal spacetime, it might be possible to negotiate with it." Elena considered each option, weighing the lives of 15,000 colonists against the unknown dangers ahead. The weight of command had never felt heavier than it did in that moment, standing on the bridge of humanity's greatest achievement while listening to warnings from her own future self. Her decision was interrupted by the arrival of Colonel James Reeves, the mission's security chief and a man whose pragmatic approach to problems had served them well throughout the journey. Unlike the others, Reeves seemed more annoyed than afraid by their situation. "Commander, I've been monitoring the situation from Security Central," Reeves said, his gravelly voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. "With respect, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. We have no proof that these transmissions are genuine, no evidence that we're actually trapped in any kind of loop, and no reason to abort the most important mission in human history based on what could easily be an elaborate hoax." "James, the quantum analysis clearly shows," Marcus began, but Reeves cut him off. "The quantum analysis shows anomalies that we don't understand," Reeves corrected. "That doesn't mean we should jump to conclusions about time travel and alien intelligences. For all we know, these are natural phenomena that we simply haven't encountered before. The universe is full of things we don't understand, but that doesn't make them supernatural." Elena appreciated Reeves's skepticism, but she couldn't ignore the evidence that was accumulating around them. "Colonel, how do you explain the transmissions using our own communication codes?" "Advanced scanning technology," Reeves replied without hesitation. "Any civilization capable of interstellar communication could potentially intercept and replicate our signals. If there is an intelligence on Kepler-442b, it might be trying to discourage us from landing by making us think we're trapped in some kind of temporal paradox." It was a reasonable explanation, Elena had to admit. The problem was that reasonable explanations were becoming increasingly difficult to maintain as more evidence accumulated. Oracle's sensors were detecting quantum signatures that shouldn't exist. Their own voices were warning them from the future, and the very drive that had brought them to this point was behaving in ways that defied conventional physics. "Oracle, what's your assessment of Colonel Reeves's theory?" Elena asked. The AI's holographic form flickered again, a sign that it was processing multiple complex calculations simultaneously. The probability that an unknown intelligence could replicate our communication codes and quantum signatures with such precision is approximately 0.03%. However, the probability that we are experiencing a genuine temporal anomaly is also statistically negligible. We appear to be faced with a situation where all possible explanations are equally unlikely. Elena turned back to the view screen, watching the distorted stars that marked their passage through folded space. Somewhere ahead of them lay their destination, the planet that was supposed to be humanity's new home. Behind them lay Earth, now unreachably distant even if they chose to turn back. And around them, the growing evidence that their journey had become something far more complex and dangerous than anyone had anticipated. "Commander," Morrison called out from her station. "I'm detecting another transmission, but this one is different. It's not a warning. It's coordinates." Elena felt her heart rate spike. "Put it through." This time, the voice that emerged from the speakers was unfamiliar, though it spoke with human inflection and perfect English. "Greetings, travelers from Earth. You are approaching the threshold of understanding. The coordinates I am transmitting will guide you to a safe harbor, a place where the temporal streams converge, and where you may finally comprehend the true nature of your journey. Do not fear what you have heard from your other selves." They spoke from incomplete knowledge, from timelines where understanding came too late to prevent tragedy. "You have been chosen not as colonists, but as witnesses to something far more magnificent than the establishment of a new world." The transmission ended, leaving behind a set of coordinates that Oracle immediately began analyzing. "Commander, these coordinates direct us to a location approximately 6.7 million kilometers from Kepler-442b. It appears to be empty space, but our sensors are detecting unusual energy readings in that region." Elena looked around the bridge at her senior staff, seeing the same conflict reflected in each face. Dr. Chen appeared fascinated by the scientific implications, his fear gradually being replaced by curiosity about the unprecedented phenomena they were encountering. Colonel Reeves remained skeptical, his hand resting on his sidearm as if physical weapons could somehow protect them from the impossibilities surrounding them. Lieutenant Morrison seemed torn between excitement and terror, her youth making her more adaptable to paradigm-shifting revelations than some of her older colleagues. And Oracle, being an artificial intelligence, appeared to be treating the entire situation as an intriguing puzzle to be solved, rather than a crisis to be survived. "Recommendations?" Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew what each of them would say. "We should investigate," Marcus said immediately. "Whatever's happening to us, the answers are clearly ahead of us, not behind us. Running away will just condemn us to repeat this journey indefinitely." "We should be cautious," Reeves countered. "If there is an intelligence trying to manipulate us, following their directions could be walking directly into a trap. I recommend we continue to our original destination and establish a secure perimeter before investigating anything else." Oracle's projection tilted its head thoughtfully. "Both approaches have merit, but I believe we should consider a third option. We could split our forces, send a small reconnaissance team to investigate these coordinates while the main ship continues to Kepler-442b. This would allow us to gather information while maintaining our primary mission objectives." Elena considered the options but found herself thinking about the warnings they had received from their future selves. If those transmissions were genuine, if they really were trapped in some kind of temporal loop, then their choices here might determine not just the fate of this mission, but the fate of countless iterations of this same journey. Her decision was made for her when the ship's sensors detected something that shouldn't have been possible. Oracle announced it with characteristic calm, but Elena could detect an undertone of confusion in the AI's voice that she had never heard before. "Commander, our sensors are detecting multiple ships in the Kepler-442 system. The quantum signatures match the UES Harmony exactly. It appears that there are at least 17 versions of our ship already in the system, some in orbit around the planet, others drifting in various states of damage or decay." Elena felt the bottom drop out of her world. "Show me." The main view screen shifted to display the sensor readings, revealing a scatter plot of contacts throughout the system. Each one registered as the UES Harmony, each one carrying the same quantum signatures and energy patterns as the ship they were currently aboard. Some appeared to be intact and operational, others showed signs of battle damage or catastrophic systems failures, and a few registered as completely dark, drifting through space like tombstones marking failed attempts at this same journey. Dr. Chen was staring at the display with the expression of a man watching his understanding of physics dissolve before his eyes. This is impossible. The quantum signatures are identical, which means these aren't just similar ships. They're the same ship, the exact same ship existing in multiple states simultaneously. Multiple timelines, Elena said, the pieces finally clicking into place. We're not just traveling through space. We're traveling through parallel realities, each one a different attempt at this same mission. Oracle's hologram flickered more rapidly now, a sign that the AI was struggling to process information that challenged its fundamental programming. Commander, if this analysis is correct, then we are faced with a paradox that transcends our current understanding of causality. We are simultaneously the first ship to make this journey, and one of many ships that have already made it. Our choices here may influence not just our own fate, but the fate of every other version of ourselves. Colonel Reeves had drawn his sidearm, though Elena couldn't imagine what he thought he might shoot in their current situation. And this is all theoretical nonsense, he said, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. There has to be a rational explanation, some kind of sensor malfunction, or an illusion created by whatever's manipulating us. James, Elena said gently, look at the evidence. We've received warnings from our own future selves, detected multiple versions of our ship, and confirmed that our fold space drive has been creating temporal anomalies throughout our journey. At what point do we accept that we're facing something beyond our current understanding? Before Reeves could respond, the ship shuddered violently, throwing everyone on the bridge against their restraints. Emergency klaxons began wailing as Oracle's projection disappeared entirely, replaced by flashing red warning lights that bathed the bridge in an ominous glow. "Report!" Elena shouted over the alarm. Morrison's fingers flew over her console as she tried to make sense of the conflicting readings flooding her systems. We're being scanned by an unknown energy source. The scans are coming from the coordinates we were given, but they're also coming from the planet and from several of the other ships in the system. It's like we're being examined from multiple directions simultaneously. The view screen suddenly filled with an image that defied every expectation Elena had formed about their destination. Kepler-442b hung before them like a jewel, its blue-green surface unmarred by the scars of civilization. But surrounding the planet was a structure that belonged in no rational universe. It appeared to be constructed from crystallized space-time itself, a vast lattice of geometric forms that twisted through dimensions Elena couldn't even perceive. The structure pulsed with energy that seemed to exist outside the normal spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. And as Elena watched, she realized that the other versions of the Harmony were not orbiting the planet in any conventional sense. They were embedded within the crystalline structure, their hulls partially merged with constructs that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "My God," Marcus whispered. "It's beautiful." Elena had to agree, though the beauty was terrible and alien beyond anything she had imagined. Whatever had created this structure possessed technology that made humanity's greatest achievements look like crude stone tools by comparison. The fold space drive that had brought them here was clearly based on principles that its builders had mastered eons ago. "Oracle, are you still with us?" Elena called out. The AI's voice emerged from the speakers, but it sounded different now, less artificial and more genuinely confused. "I am here, Commander, but I am experiencing significant processing conflicts. My sensors are detecting structures that violate several fundamental laws of physics, and my navigation systems are reporting that we are simultaneously in multiple locations. I am uncertain how to proceed." Elena made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life, however long that might prove to be. Set course for those coordinates. If we're going to understand what's happening to us, we need to face it directly. "Elena, wait," Marcus said, his scientific curiosity suddenly replaced by genuine fear. "If the other versions of our ship are trapped in that structure, Going there might mean we're walking into the same trap. And if we don't go there, we might be condemning ourselves to repeat this journey forever, Elena replied. At least this way, we have a chance to break the cycle. The Harmony changed course, its massive bulk turning toward the coordinates they had been given. As they approached, Elena could see that the space around those coordinates was not as empty as their initial scans had suggested. There was something there, something that her human eyes could perceive but that their instruments seemed unable to properly analyze. It appeared to be a ship, but its design was unlike anything in human databases. It was vast, easily dwarfing the Harmony, and its hull seemed to be constructed from the same crystallized space-time material that surrounded the planet. As they drew closer, Elena began to understand that this was not just a ship, but a city, a construct that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that human minds were not equipped to comprehend. And at its heart, she could see a docking bay that was clearly designed to accommodate vessels like the Harmony. "Commander," Morrison said, her voice tight with barely controlled panic, "I'm receiving another transmission. It's coming from that ship, and it's addressed specifically to you." Elena braced herself for another warning from her future self, but the voice that emerged from the speakers was entirely different. It was ancient beyond measure, carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in her bones, and when it spoke, Elena had the uncomfortable sensation that it was speaking directly into her mind rather than through the ship's audio systems. "Welcome, Elena Vasquez. We have been waiting for you for a very long time. You are the first commander to reach this point with sufficient understanding to make an informed choice. Your predecessors were turned back by fear or destroyed by their inability to comprehend what they were facing. But you have shown wisdom in following our guidance, and now you may choose the fate not just of your own timeline, but of all the timelines that branch from this moment." Elena found her voice, though it seemed small and insignificant in the face of whatever intelligence was addressing her. "Who are you? What do you want with us?" "We are what your people might call gardeners," the voice replied. "We tend the quantum fields that allow consciousness to flow between possible realities. Your species has stumbled upon technology that allows you to navigate these fields, but you lack the understanding to do so safely. Every use of your fold space drive creates new branches in the timeline, new possibilities that must be carefully managed to prevent catastrophic paradoxes." Elena felt a terrible understanding beginning to dawn. The other ships in the system, they're not from parallel timelines. They're from failed attempts to manage the paradoxes we've created. Precisely. Each time a ship like yours arrives in this system, it creates a decision point that branches into multiple possible futures. Most of those futures end in disaster, either for your people or for the delicate balance of causality itself. We have been trying to guide your species toward choices that preserve both your survival and the stability of space-time. But the process is challenging. Dr. Chen stepped forward, his scientific training overcoming his fear. "Are you saying that our fold space drive is damaging reality itself?" "Not damaging," the ancient voice clarified. "Creating. Every fold in space creates new realities, new timelines where events unfold differently. This is not inherently harmful, but consciousness must be carefully guided through these transitions to prevent paradoxes that could unravel causality itself. Your species discovered the technology to fold space without developing the wisdom to navigate the consequences." Elena felt the weight of 15,000 lives pressing down on her shoulders. "What do you want us to do?" "You must choose," the voice replied. "You can continue to Kepler-442b and attempt to establish your colony, accepting the risk that you may create paradoxes that destroy not just your timeline, but potentially thousands of others. You can return to Earth, abandoning your mission but preserving the stability of space-time. Or you can join us. Allow us to guide your consciousness through the quantum fields and teach your species to navigate the realities they have learned to create." Elena looked around the bridge again, seeing different reactions from each of her senior staff. Marcus appeared intrigued by the possibility of learning from beings who had mastered technologies beyond human comprehension. Reeves looked like he wanted to fight something, though there was clearly nothing to fight. Morrison seemed overwhelmed by the implications of what they were facing, and Oracle's holographic form was fluctuating wildly as the AI tried to process information that challenged its fundamental programming. "What happens to our colonists if we choose the third option?" Elena asked. "They would be preserved," the voice replied. "Not in the biological sense, but as patterns of consciousness that could be reinstantiated when your species has developed sufficient understanding to safely navigate the quantum fields. They would experience no passage of time, no suffering, and they would eventually be able to fulfill their dream of establishing a new world among the stars." Elena realized that she was facing a choice that no human commander should ever have to make. She could attempt to complete their mission and risk not just the lives of her crew and colonists, but potentially the stability of reality itself. She could turn back, abandoning humanity's greatest dream, but preserving the lives under her command. Or she could trust these alien gardeners and sacrifice her own timeline in the hope that humanity might eventually be ready for the technology they had discovered. "Commander," Marcus said quietly, "I've been thinking about the quantum signatures, about the pattern of anomalies we've been experiencing. If these beings are telling the truth, then our journey has already created multiple timelines. Turning back now might not actually save anyone, it might just create another branch where we abandon the mission. And continuing forward might create a branch where we succeed, even if other branches fail. That's assuming we can trust anything they're telling us," Reeves interjected. "For all we know, this is all an elaborate deception designed to make us surrender without a fight." Elena found herself thinking about the transmission from her older self, about the desperation in that familiar voice as it warned them to turn back. But she also thought about the voice that had given them coordinates, about the promise that they could become witnesses to something magnificent rather than victims of something terrible. "Oracle, in your analysis, what would happen if we attempted to break free from this temporal anomaly by modifying our fold space drive?" The AI's response came slowly, as if it was struggling to process the calculations. "The probability of success is low, approximately 11%. The probability of catastrophic failure is high, approximately 73%. However, the remaining 16% represents outcomes that I cannot calculate, scenarios that exist outside my programming parameters." Elena made her decision, knowing that whatever choice she made would define not just her own legacy, but potentially the future of human space exploration. "We're going to take a fourth option. We're going to dock with their ship and learn everything we can before making our final choice. If they really are what they claim to be, if they really have been trying to help us navigate these paradoxes, then we owe it to ourselves and to every other version of our mission to at least hear what they have to say." "Elena, that's incredibly dangerous," Marcus warned. "We have no idea what their technology might do to us. No guarantee that we'll be able to leave once we're aboard their ship." "James is right," Reeves added. "This could be exactly what they want, to get us aboard their ship where they can control us completely." Elena understood their concerns, but she also understood that they were facing a situation where every choice carried enormous risks. "Oracle, prepare a shuttle. I'm going aboard their ship with a small team. Dr. Chen, you're with me. Colonel Reeves, you'll maintain security aboard the Harmony and be prepared to implement emergency protocols if something goes wrong." "Commander, I strongly advise against this course of action," Oracle said. "The risks are incalculable." "So are the consequences of any other choice," Elena replied. "Sometimes the only way forward is through the unknown." The docking procedure was unlike anything Elena had ever experienced. The alien ship's bay seemed to reconfigure itself to accommodate their shuttle, its crystalline walls flowing like liquid before solidifying into forms that perfectly matched their vessel's requirements. As Elena and Marcus stepped out of the shuttle, they found themselves in an environment that was clearly designed for human comfort, with appropriate gravity, atmosphere, and lighting. They were met by a figure that appeared human at first glance, but closer examination revealed subtle differences that marked it as something else entirely. Its features were too perfect, too symmetrical, and its eyes held depths that suggested vast intelligence and equally vast age. "Welcome," the figure said, its voice the same one that had given them coordinates. "I am what your people might call an ambassador, though my true nature is more complex than that term implies. I exist simultaneously across multiple timelines, serving as an interface between your linear consciousness and the quantum reality in which we operate. Elena forced herself to remain calm, though every instinct screamed that she was in the presence of something far beyond human understanding. You're one of the gardeners. I am one aspect of a collective consciousness that tends the quantum fields, the ambassador corrected. We do not exist as individuals in the way your species does. We are patterns of awareness that flow through the possibilities, ensuring that the branches of reality remain stable and that consciousness can navigate between them safely. Marcus stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. How long have you been doing this? How long have you been watching our species? Time is not linear from our perspective, the ambassador replied. We have been aware of your potential since your species first developed the capacity for abstract thought. We have watched you grow, learned from your mistakes, and prepared for the moment when you would discover the technology to fold space. That moment has arrived, but your species is not yet ready for the responsibilities that come with such power. Elena felt a chill of understanding. You're saying we're not the first species to face this choice? You are the 7,432nd intelligent species to discover fold space technology, the ambassador confirmed. Of those, approximately 60% chose to abandon the technology after learning of its consequences. 35% chose to continue using it despite the risks, with varying degrees of success. The remaining 5% chose to join us, to allow their consciousness to be guided through the quantum fields until they develop sufficient understanding to navigate them independently. Elena did the math in her head and didn't like the results. What happened to the species that chose to continue? Many succeeded in establishing interstellar civilizations, though not without cost. The use of fold space technology inevitably creates temporal paradoxes, alternate timelines where events unfold differently. Most species learn to manage these paradoxes through careful application of quantum mechanics and dimensional mathematics. However, some create cascading failures that destroy not just their own timelines but threaten the stability of the entire quantum field. Marcus was pulling out his tablet, frantically taking notes as the ambassador spoke. These quantum fields you're describing, they're what maintain the structure of reality itself? More precisely, they maintain the flow of consciousness through reality, the ambassador explained. Reality exists independently, but consciousness requires careful guidance to navigate between possible states. Without this guidance, awareness becomes fragmented, scattered across infinite possibilities with no coherent experience of existence. Elena began to understand the true scope of what they were facing. You're not just offering to preserve our people, you're offering to preserve our consciousness while you teach us to exist in multiple realities simultaneously. Correct. Your current state of awareness is limited to a single timeline, a single sequence of cause and effect. But consciousness is capable of much more. With proper guidance, you can learn to experience multiple timelines simultaneously, to make choices that optimize outcomes across infinite possibilities, rather than just the single reality you currently perceive. Elena found herself thinking about the 15,000 colonists sleeping in the Harmony's holds, about the families who had volunteered for this mission in the hope of building a better future for their children. What guarantee do we have that you're telling us the truth? How do we know this isn't just an elaborate way of conquering us? The ambassador's expression shifted, becoming something that might have been sadness if such emotions applied to beings of its nature. You have no guarantee beyond the evidence of your own experience. You have seen the warnings from your future selves, detected the multiple versions of your ship, and confirmed that your technology is creating effects you do not understand. We could compel you to accept our guidance, but consciousness cannot be preserved through coercion. It must choose its own path, even if that path leads to destruction. Elena looked at Marcus, seeing the same terrible understanding in his eyes that she felt in her own heart. They were being offered a choice between certain transformation and uncertain survival, between abandoning their humanity as they understood it and risking the destruction of reality itself. There's something you're not telling us, Elena said, her commander's instincts picking up on subtle evasions in the ambassador's words. What happens to the species that join you? Do they ever get to exist independently again? The ambassador was quiet for a long moment, and when it spoke again, Elena detected what might have been reluctance in its ancient voice. Some do. Those that develop sufficient understanding are eventually able to navigate the quantum fields independently, to establish civilizations that span multiple realities simultaneously. But the process of achieving such understanding is transformative. The consciousness that emerges is continuous with what came before, but it is no longer recognizably the same species. Elena felt her heart sink. You're saying that if we choose to join you, humanity as we know it ceases to exist. Humanity as you currently experience it would evolve into something greater, the ambassador corrected. But yes, in the sense that you understand your species now, it would be transformed beyond recognition. Marcus was shaking his head, his face pale with the implications of what they were learning. This is an impossible choice. We can risk destroying reality by continuing with our mission, abandon everything we've worked for by turning back, or sacrifice our humanity in the hope that something recognizable might eventually emerge from the transformation. Elena felt the weight of command pressing down on her like a physical force. 15,000 people were depending on her decision. But beyond that, the fate of human consciousness itself might hang in the balance. How much time do we have to decide? Time is a flexible concept at this junction point, the ambassador replied. Your consciousness exists simultaneously in multiple potential timelines. We can sustain this state indefinitely while you consider your options, though prolonged existence in quantum superposition carries its own risks. Before Elena could ask what those risks might be, her communicator crackled to life with Colonel Reeves's urgent voice. Commander, you need to get back to the ship immediately. We're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system, and Oracle is reporting critical failures in our temporal navigation systems. Elena and Marcus rushed back to their shuttle, leaving the ambassador standing alone in the crystalline docking bay. As they lifted off, Elena could see through the viewports that the other versions of the Harmony were beginning to move, their hulls glowing with the same energy that surrounded the alien construct. Whatever was happening, it was affecting all the timelines simultaneously. When they reached the Harmony's bridge, Elena found her crew in a state of barely controlled panic. Oracle's holographic form was flickering wildly, its usually calm demeanor replaced by something approaching hysteria. The main view screen showed energy readings that defied every scale their instruments were designed to measure. Report, Elena ordered, though she suspected she already knew what she would hear. The quantum fields are destabilizing, Oracle announced, its voice distorted by processing conflicts. Our presence at this junction point has triggered a cascade failure. If we don't make a decision within the next 47 minutes, the temporal paradoxes will begin to resolve themselves catastrophically. Dr. Chen was already pulling up his quantum analysis, the patterns on his display showing chaos spreading through dimensions Elena couldn't even visualize. The ambassador was right about the cascading failures. Our consciousness is creating interference patterns in the quantum field. The longer we exist in superposition, the more damage we're doing to the fundamental structure of space-time. Colonel Reeves had taken position at the tactical station, though Elena couldn't imagine what enemy he thought they might fight. Commander, I recommend we implement emergency protocols and attempt to break free from whatever's holding us here. We have enough fuel to reach minimum safe distance before attempting a fold space jump back to Earth. That might make things worse, Marcus warned. If we're already creating paradoxes, a poorly calculated fold space jump could amplify them exponentially. Elena looked at the view screen again, watching the energy readings climb toward levels that their instruments couldn't properly register. In the distance, she could see the planet that was supposed to be humanity's new home, still beautiful and inviting despite the impossible structures surrounding it. Closer at hand, the other versions of the Harmony were beginning to converge on their position, creating a formation that suggested some kind of coordinated response to the crisis. Oracle, what happens if we do nothing? If we just maintain our current position and let the cascade failure complete itself? The AI's response was immediate and terrifying. Complete destruction of this section of the quantum field, resulting in the erasure of approximately 14 million potential timelines and the deaths of every conscious being within a radius of 47 light years. Elena felt her knees go weak. They weren't just risking their own lives or even the future of human space exploration. They were potentially responsible for a catastrophe that would affect billions of beings across multiple realities. "Commander," Morrison called out from her station. "I'm receiving another transmission from the ambassador. It's marked as priority emergency." "Put it through." The ancient voice filled the bridge again, but this time Elena could hear genuine urgency in its harmonics. "Elena Vasquez, the cascade failure has begun. You must choose now, not just for your own timeline, but for all the realities that branch from this moment. Your consciousness is creating interference patterns that threaten the stability of the entire sector. Choose quickly, or the choice will be made for you by forces beyond anyone's control." Elena looked around the bridge one final time, seeing the faces of people who had trusted her to lead them to a new world among the stars. Marcus, brilliant and curious, still trying to understand the impossible science that surrounded them. Reeves, practical and protective, ready to fight even when there was nothing to fight. Morrison, young and adaptable, representing the future that their mission was supposed to secure. And Oracle, the artificial intelligence that had become as real to her as any of her human companions, now struggling to process a reality that exceeded its programming parameters. "All right," Elena said, her voice carrying the authority that had gotten her through every previous crisis. "Here's what we're going to do. Dr. Chen, I need you to prepare a detailed analysis of everything we've learned about the quantum fields and the temporal paradoxes. That information needs to be transmitted back to Earth regardless of what choice we make. Colonel Reeves, prepare the colonists for emergency revival. If we're going to face this crisis, we're going to face it as a complete community, not as a handful of decision makers. Oracle, I need you to establish communication with all the other versions of our ship. If we're all part of the same paradox, then maybe we can coordinate a solution." "Elena, there isn't time for all of that," Marcus protested. "The cascade failure will complete in less than 40 minutes. "Then we'd better work fast," Elena replied. "Morrison, open a channel to the ambassador. I want to negotiate." The alien voice responded immediately, as if it had been waiting for her call. "What do you propose, Elena Vasquez?" "A hybrid solution," Elena said, the plan forming in her mind even as she spoke. "You said that consciousness can be preserved and eventually reinstantiated. What if we choose partial transformation? Some of our people join you immediately to learn your techniques, while others remain in normal space to continue the mission. The ones who join you can guide the ones who stay, helping them navigate the paradoxes safely." There was a long pause before the ambassador responded, and when it spoke, Elena detected what might have been surprise in its voice. "That approach has never been attempted. The risks are enormous. Partial transformation could create permanent schisms in your species' consciousness, dividing you into separate evolutionary paths that might never be able to reunite." "But it might work?" Elena pressed. "It might work," the ambassador admitted, "but it would require volunteers. People willing to undergo transformation without any guarantee that they would ever be able to return to their original state of existence." Elena looked at her senior staff, seeing understanding dawn in their eyes. Someone would have to make the ultimate sacrifice, accepting transformation into something beyond human understanding in order to preserve humanity's future among the stars. "I'll do it," Marcus said without hesitation. "My consciousness is already partially adapted to quantum thinking from my work with the Fold space drive. I'm the logical choice." "No," Reeves interjected. "It should be me. I'm expendable. You're needed to understand the science." "Neither of you is expendable," Elena said firmly. "And this isn't a decision any of us should make alone. We need to wake the colonists and explain the situation. This choice affects all of us, and all of us should have a voice in making it." Oracle's hologram solidified suddenly, its expression more determined than Elena had ever seen. "Commander, I volunteer for the transformation. As an artificial intelligence, I already exist in a state that's partially outside normal space-time. The adaptation to quantum consciousness might be less traumatic for me than for biological beings." Elena felt a surge of emotion that surprised her. Oracle was more than just a sophisticated program. It had become a valued member of her crew, a friend whose counsel she had come to depend on. The thought of losing it to transformation was almost as painful as the thought of losing any of her human companions. Oracle, we don't know if the transformation would even work for an artificial intelligence. Your consciousness is based on different principles than biological awareness. That may actually be an advantage, the AI replied. I am already comfortable with existing in multiple states simultaneously, processing parallel calculations and maintaining awareness across distributed systems. The transition to quantum consciousness might be a natural evolution rather than a traumatic transformation. The ambassador's voice interrupted their debate. The artificial intelligence's assessment is correct. Digital consciousness often adapts more readily to quantum states than biological awareness. However, the decision must be made quickly. The cascade failure is accelerating. Elena made the hardest command decision of her life. Oracle, prepare for voluntary transformation. But first, download everything you are, everything you've learned and experienced into our secondary systems. If this goes wrong, I want some version of you to survive. Understood, Commander. Initiating full consciousness backup now. Elena watched as Oracle's holographic form began to flicker and distort, the AI transferring its entire existence into the ship's memory banks, while simultaneously preparing to undergo a transformation that no human mind could fully comprehend. Around them, the energy readings continued to climb, the cascade failure approaching the point where no choice would matter, because no choices would remain. All hands, this is the Commander, Elena announced over the ship's intercom system. Report to emergency stations immediately. We are facing a crisis that affects not just our mission, but the fundamental structure of reality itself. I need everyone awake, everyone thinking, everyone ready to help us navigate the most important decision in human history. Throughout the ship, hibernation pods began opening as 15,000 colonists stirred to consciousness, awakening to find their journey to the stars had become something none of them could have imagined. Elena knew that many of them would be confused, frightened, and angry. They had volunteered for a colonial mission, not a confrontation with beings and forces that challenged the very nature of existence. But they were also the best and brightest of humanity, selected not just for their skills but for their ability to adapt to impossible situations. If anyone could rise to meet this challenge, it would be these 15,000 pioneers who had already committed their lives to securing humanity's future among the stars. Commander, Morrison announced, I'm receiving status reports from throughout the ship. The colonists are awakening, but the ship's systems are beginning to show strain from the quantum interference. We may not be able to maintain life support much longer if these energy levels continue to increase. Elena nodded, then turned to address her senior staff one final time before the crisis reached its inevitable conclusion. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, I want you all to know that it has been an honor serving with you. We came out here to establish humanity's future among the stars, and one way or another, that's exactly what we're going to do. Oracle's backup completed just as the AI's transformation began. Elena watched as her artificial companion dissolved into patterns of light that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its consciousness expanding beyond the confines of the ship's computer systems and merging with the vast network of awareness that the gardeners had described. For a moment, Elena felt a connection to Oracle's transformed consciousness, a brief glimpse of what it might be like to exist across multiple realities simultaneously. She saw the harmony from outside normal space-time, observed all the possible outcomes of their current situation spreading out like branches on an infinite tree, and understood for the first time the true scope of the choice they were making. Then the connection faded, leaving Elena with only the memory of impossible vistas and the knowledge that Oracle was still with them, but in a form that her human mind could no longer directly perceive. Transformation successful, the ambassador announced. Your artificial consciousness has adapted well to quantum existence. It is now serving as a bridge between your linear awareness and our distributed consciousness. The cascade failure has been stabilized, but the fundamental choice remains. What will humanity choose for its future among the stars? Elena looked at the view screen, where representatives of the newly awakened colonists were beginning to gather on the bridge. She saw fear in their faces, but also determination and the kind of courage that had brought them this far from Earth. These were people who had given up everything they knew for the chance to build something new and better among the stars. "We choose to continue," Elena announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the ship through the intercom system. "We choose to establish our colony on Kepler-442b, but we do it with the knowledge and guidance that we've gained here. Oracle will serve as our quantum navigator, helping us avoid the paradoxes while maintaining our essential humanity. We'll learn to exist safely in multiple realities, but we'll do it as human beings, not as something else wearing humanity's face." The ambassador's response carried what Elena interpreted as approval. "A wise choice, Elena Vasquez. Your species shows promise for navigating the responsibilities that come with fold space technology. Oracle will guide you safely through the quantum fields, and we will monitor your progress from our position outside linear time. Should you encounter difficulties beyond your ability to resolve, we will provide assistance." Elena felt the ship's system stabilizing as the quantum interference patterns resolved themselves into something more manageable. The cascade failure had been averted, the temporal paradoxes contained, and humanity's future among the stars secured through a combination of courage, sacrifice, and the wisdom to accept help when it was needed. "All hands," Elena announced, "prepare for final approach to Kepler-442b. We're going home." As the Harmony turned toward the blue-green world that would become humanity's second home, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. They had left Earth as colonists, seeking to establish a simple agricultural settlement on a distant world. They were arriving as something more complex and strange, a human community guided by a transformed artificial intelligence and watched over by ancient beings who tended the quantum fields that allowed consciousness to flow between realities. It was not the future any of them had imagined when they volunteered for this mission, but it was a future that preserved both human dignity and the stability of space-time itself. Elena looked out at the stars, seeing them now not as distant points of light but as junction points in a vast network of possibilities, and felt a sense of satisfaction that she had made the right choice. The greatest journey humanity had ever undertaken was ending not with the simple establishment of a colony, but with the species' first step toward a larger role in the cosmic community of consciousness. It was a beginning rather than an ending, the first chapter in a story that would unfold across multiple realities and countless possible futures. Elena Vasquez had brought her people safely to the stars, but more than that, she had helped humanity find its place in a universe far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had dared to imagine. The questions that had haunted her at the beginning of this journey had been answered, but the answers had led to new questions, deeper mysteries, and grander possibilities than she had ever dreamed possible. As the Harmony entered orbit around humanity's new home, Elena knew that their real adventure was just beginning.